All right, so let's welcome to the stage Mr. Anthem Hayek Blanchard. So what a name, right? So I want to brag a little bit about Anthem. He comes from a long bloodline of strong free market, honest money, upbringing. I mean, first name named after an Ayn Rand book, right? Anybody read Anthem? Come on, raise your hand, show yourselves. Okay, all right. Middle name named after Austrian economist Friedrich Hayek. And, of course, Blanchard is a great bloodline. So I know he gets tired of hearing that kind of introduction because he does great things himself, right? And so he's been instrumental in continuing that tradition of bringing honest, sound money to the market. And he runs a company called Anthem Gold. They just recently purchased Amaji Metals, so helping them out and to continue to bring the crypto to gold market. So let's give a big hand for Anthem Blanchard. Thank you. And also up, we're going to bring up Mr. Mad Bitcoins himself, Mr. Thomas Hunt.
All right, great. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having us. So just some basic questions here. We're just going to talk to Anthem about his new project. So Anthem, what are you guys doing now at Anthem Gold?
Yeah, so Anthem Vault, Anthem Gold, it's actually Hayek Gold is our gold-backed Bitcoin, or it's actually gold token that runs along the Bitcoin rails through Counterparty. So it was, I think, the first major gold-backed Bitcoin. They're obviously, I'm really supportive. I see Bell Gold here. Really supportive of what they're doing. Just supportive of the greater community. So basically, our mantra is to try to make assets as accessible to the world as possible, and the safest, secure, most valuable assets accessible to the world. So our view at Anthem Vault is that the best way to do this is through crypto. So obviously, you don't have to repeat all of the benefits. You guys know all the benefits. So what I try to do, I'm not a PhD computer scientist. I wish I was. I wish I had that mental capacity. I'm not a PhD physicist. I am a businessman. My goal is to try to translate to user experience for our user base the benefits that this earlier speakers and I'm sure the future speakers that I'm looking forward to hearing today and tomorrow espouse.
So if someone was to buy these gold-backed tickets, would it be like Bitcoin where the price is constantly going up and down?
Well, a Hayek is a gram of gold redeemable in an Anthem Vault account. So the unit stays constant to the price of gold to that extent. So we're using Bitcoin blockchain as rails, as a vehicle of transmission for the gold.
So is it mainly for storing value, or could you also spend value with this system?
It's both. So it makes gold spendable. It's storable. We have a fractional metal ownership platform, allows clients to buy, sell any little parts as small as a 10 billionth of an ounce is 10 zeros to the right of the decimal. So the idea of having crypto rails, this gold token that runs along Bitcoin, is the idea that you can spend it if you ever needed to.
And you guys are doing that on Counterparty?
Yeah. We decided to choose Counterparty. We had some good conversations like really early on. Actually, in Shanghai last year, I was speaking with Paul Snow about Factum and really impressed with what those guys are doing. Actually, Paul recommended to me. I was like, oh, should we go with Factum? He was a really straight-up guy, I thought, and said, no, go with Counterparty because they're further along. And that influenced me quite a bit. We were already looking at Counterparty. I think it made a lot of sense because it was already pretty well developed. So that's what we've chosen as an initial platform. Yeah.
So how would your product compare with other products like BitReserve? I know BitReserve recently changed their name and they're leaving Bitcoin. Is your company going to do the same thing, or should we prepare for a repeat?
We're going the opposite way. So we have at least a dozen at this point different product development ideas and concepts, ways to use Bitcoin blockchain, other blockchains to provide services that we think people will use, basically provide traditional financial service type products. And I'm starting to see other startups just embrace this idea too, like Notary is one that I've seen recently. That's something that we've had in the works for a while. So we look at crypto as an innovation. Obviously from a practical standpoint, all the information is secured all the way through the point of sale, which is a huge, huge leap. That's something really important, and all you need ultimately is internet access, right? Because email address, basically, you can have a wallet, a crypto wallet. So for the developing world, that's something that we're really excited about. We've had some preliminary conversations like BitStake, BitPesa. Really, really cool, harnessing the open platform of Bitcoin from a regulatory standpoint.
And it has all the advantages of gold where you're holding a stable currency, but you don't have to carry all that weight around, right? You could just put your gold on your phone, move to another country, take your gold off your phone, something like that?
And to answer your question more specifically, in regards to some of the other services that have integrated with Bitcoin, really for us, we're looking at Bitcoin as not just the store of value like some of these other services are, but actually as a vehicle in and of itself of transmission to be able to transmit gold along the Bitcoin blockchain as opposed to just going back and forth and speculating from one store of value to another store of value.
Now, if I wanted to withdraw actual physical gold from Anthem Vault, could I do that?
Yeah, we do have that request. It's a kilo of gold. It's a kilo, 1,000 grams. Do the math, right? So that's an easy one. So it's about $35,000 worth of gold. Practically speaking, being able to spend Hayek. That's something that we're working on right now. We launched Hayek Gold in May. We got hit up with a FinCEN ruling in August that basically said that any gold token along a decentralized network would be considered an administrator, which is a money service business. So sorry to snooze everyone with regulatory talk, but basically meant that we had to become a money service business. So that's the process that we're going through right now. We're based here in Nevada, which is fortunate. Nevada is a great jurisdiction for anyone out there that's looking to do something, and they're going to get ensnarled in an MSB issue. It's about $250 a year for the surety bond. So it's one of the more forgiving states. So
now, we talked a little bit about this earlier. Your family has an impressive background in gold. Could you say just a little bit about what your father was up to in the 70s?
He was a fearless individual, is the best way to describe him. Near fatal car accident as a teenager, had a few vertebrae shattered, paraplegic, literally almost died. So his history teacher became really enamored with the idea of sound money and gold and silver and what it represents, individual sovereignty and protection of your purchasing power and value. So when silver went out of the coinage, went out of some dimes and quarters in the 60s, 63, 64, he basically realized, well, this is wrong. This is wrong. It's like the last vestiges of sound money, practically speaking, are going away. And he became really interested in the subject matter. And then 1971 came around, and President Nixon said, other central banks were no longer allowed to redeem $35 for an ounce of gold, and that was basically put my dad over the top. So what he did was he bought a bar of gold from Canada. As Trace alluded to earlier, it was prohibited for U.S. citizens to actually own gold bullion from 1933 through 1974, and so. Pretty insane that this is even the case, right? It's this benign metal,
and most people don't even know about that FDR actually seized all of the Americans' gold during World War II to put more money in the Treasury.
Yeah, it was this Keynesian thought, right? If the government could control money, then they could make the economy magically better, and Skittles and rainbows and unicorns appear. So obviously that proved to be a huge fallacy. But unfortunately, this disallowing prohibition of gold still continued even after 1971. So Dad smuggled bar gold from Canada and paraded around Washington, D.C., continued to call press conferences. And no one showed up, and then all of a sudden the three main networks showed up, or three only networks at the time showed up, and had a big presser, ended up getting on the national news, and that supposedly was the catalyst that got Congress and President Ford to move to rescind his Executive Order 6103, I believe, and then from that, parents went on to create the largest gold coin company in the world, Blanchard & Company. So they sold that to GE in '89, and so that's a very, very, very proud lineage. I view my parents' role as helping to be a catalyst to make gold accessible to hundreds of millions of people in the U.S. And ultimately, our goal with Anthem Vault is to make gold and precious, most valuable stores of value accessible to the world. It's like one thing that I'm particularly proud of is that we enable someone from anywhere in the world to hold value in the same location that Fed member banks literally hold their cash. and Fortune 100 companies literally hold their cash. So you can have someone in the middle of any developing country that actually has more utility with value and held in these same vaulted institutions. And it's a pretty neat cognitive dissonance thing when you really think about it.
It is pretty amazing to imagine. A lot of people can't even have savings accounts, but Bitcoin gives them the ability to have a savings account with Bitcoin. And if they had your gold product, they could have a savings account with gold in it, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, any counterparty-enabled wallet. So, that was one of the reasons that we chose Counterparty initially, just because, they were one of the first layers out there that really made a lot of headway in terms of adopting other tokens. So,
now going back to selling physical gold, it sounds like you're doing something with Emerging Metals now. What's going on there?
Yeah, Amagi was someone that they always really impressed me. I think that this whole combination of digital and physical and gold and crypto, I view it as a really important medium, gold that is, in metals, to have a peaceful transition to a crypto world. Gold is something that people already understand. All central banks hold it. Billions of people hold it. They understand it. And the facts become where Bitcoin trades anywhere, $50 to $100 million a day, depending on the day on average, and volume. Gold, you're looking at 90 to 100 billion a day, including derivatives. Forex, you're looking at upwards of 6 trillion a day. So gold, by injecting gold into Bitcoin, you're adding several factors, almost 2,000 time factor of liquidity. So it's pretty significant. I think that it's going to help be a catalyst for more crypto adoption. So I think, as opposed to thinking of it as an either or, either crypto or gold, I think of it as an and other crypto currencies as well, other than Bitcoin too.
So now we have a really hard question, because at one point I could buy an ounce of gold with a single Bitcoin. Will that happen again?
That's a great question. I think I got asked a similar question by the Canadian Times, and it was like when Bitcoin went all the way back down again to a couple hundred and went all the way back up. And I think I did say I was expecting it to go down and then expecting higher highs, and I would say the same thing again. That did happen, and I would say the same thing now. To the Canadian Mail, I'd say to you is to be. I think it's going to go lower, and I think it's going to go a lot higher. I think we'll see.
Very safe answer there.
We'll
Lower and higher. Write that one down, everyone. Very economist.
Yeah, you're right. That's probably a problem of doing too much mainstream media, right? You start like getting the effects of that. So, but I mean, I think it's going to take another leap in user experience. I think some of the catalysts are going to be companies in this audience, and we need to make Bitcoin more user friendly. I was like, Chris was talking a little bit about that prior, and it's true. It needs to get Apple and Google easy.
Well, I think we're getting close. Are there any questions in the audience? Go ahead. Do you want to shout it out, or should I bring the mic over? All right.
Good question. So first question, or the $5 word that they use in finance, a rehypothecation. And basically it's just saying, taking someone's gold and then basically selling it again and again and again, even though it's the same gold. So, I mean, I can tell you that I just spoke with like a state representative, it was a few weeks ago, but about visiting some government locations and asking for an audit and not being given a proper audit of any kind of allocated numbers. My experience with gold money, I don't want to name any names on camera, but I can tell you some major bullion banks that basically stated that if they had gold in the vaults, then they weren't doing their job. I mean, banks are in the business of lending ultimately. To your second question about like proof of existence of the gold, it's a tricky one. We're audited. We have bar lists on the website. The hardest part about this industry is the vault operators themselves. And you're dealing with Loomis, Brinks, 100-plus-year-old companies, and ultimately you're dealing with their insurers, really. That's the trickiest part, and that's even more difficult because you're dealing with Lloyd's, which is an insurance broker that's hundreds of years old, and they have these very stodgy restrictions. Now, like anything, you can negotiate, and there's different leverage points, and there's all kinds of applications that we're putting pressure on our vaulting partners to adopt that involve Internet of Things, involve blockchain, involve verification of bars. I don't want to get too much into that, but from a business development standpoint, but there's a ton of disruptive innovation that needs to happen in the physical custodian vaulting industry. Yeah, for all budding entrepreneurs out there that want to have a go at that's a good one. So we're constantly pushing the envelope. I don't think it's going to get to where it needs to be until we have video and all kinds of other X-ray, and there's a whole slew of verification that needs to happen still. We're not anywhere near it yet, and we won't be really until we get the vault operators, major vault operators, on board, which we're close. We're pretty close. So.
Go ahead. So, do you have a direct relationship between the ounce of gold to Bitcoin? Do you have a published relationship between gold and Bitcoin?
So in our case, it's just a Hayek is 1 gram of gold redeemable in an Anthem vault account. And they're prepaid stored insurance up front, so it's a little bit like a front-loaded mutual fund from that standpoint. So that way it's not like an ETF where you have to do this mental calculation of, I'm losing 40 basis points a year. It's like, okay, as a unit of account that gets confusing. So a Hayek is always a gram of gold. Now, in terms of how fast the Hayek transmits along the Bitcoin blockchain, before we suspended the service the second or third week of August, I think we were at about 12,000 Satoshi or somewhere around there roughly for the transaction, and just constantly adjusting based on what was going on in the network, basically clearing times. So so really sorry Michael. Yeah, so the number of Bitcoin basically was just more of a function of how much utility is needed, basically, to move the gold along the Bitcoin blockchain.
I was just clarifying, first of all, that BitReserve did not get rid of Bitcoin. They just changed their name to Uphold because it's easier to deal in certain jurisdictions if you don't have the word bit in your name. But they have all their KYC licenses and everything. It's just that certain banks are bit who? No, whatever, So, but Uphold is like, ooh, it sounds good. So, but they have just as much Bitcoin as they ever did, and USD and Euro and all that stuff. And actually, they do have gold on the radar, too. Question on Hayek, because I know we had discussed this a year ago. Are you able to sell until you get all your licenses? And if you do, will it then go on like CoinMarketCap? Because I don't see it as a trading coin yet. Yeah,
so great question. So right now, the clients can buy, sell parts of a bars, and we have 5,000 accounts. Really, that functionality has always been there. It will continue to be there because that's not a money service business by definition of the federal government. It's just buying and selling precious metal. So with the Hayek, once we get licensed up in Nevada and then FinCEN as a result of being licensed in Nevada, basically, basically at that point, the token should be on CoinMarketCap. Anyone basically then that's in the jurisdiction of Nevada, or it could be an international jurisdiction where we're dealing with a company that's properly licensed as a money service business, money transmitter, then they will be able to basically have an account in Anthem Vault, and then they can then sell the tokens as they see fit in their retail operations in that jurisdiction.
Okay, so unlike, say, Shapeshift, where they exclude New York, you're only including Nevada and outside of the United States when that happens.
Well, right, so technically anyone that has a crypto wallet can hold the Hayek. I mean, where they are in the world, we don't know. But let's say someone that resided in New York wanted to redeem Hayeks through Anthem Vault, they would not be allowed to do that because until we were properly registered in New York with BitLicense, presumably, if we ran into that with administrators.
Will it trade on an exchange though, like a Poloniex or something?
Oh yes.
And that'll be anybody can buy it just like anything else. They don't have to.
Oh yes. That's the big. I mean, that's the real big value add.
And do you have an anticipated date for when that's going to be?
Hopefully in the next 2 months. I mean, it's as quickly as we can get. I mean, we've already made all the relationships. We already have the Hayek out. We have the centralized payment too. We have all of that done. So now it's literally just a question of going through. I mean, we have like one other director that's filling out their form that I might get it today or tomorrow. It's supposedly be about 6-8 weeks.
And the last question that I thought of when I gave the the phone back, or the mic back, was you bought Amagi. Congratulations. Didn't they have a previous relationship with another Coinbase? Was it Sarika or?
They were doing digital tangible, I think it was.
Right, which is now called Sarika.
Okay, Sarika. Okay, yeah. So they had that program before we purchased. The prior ownership, I think, had discontinued that relationship. Okay. I didn't get too much into why. I mean, because we were so heavily focused on Hayek development. It didn't really fit exactly our strategic dev and present, but that said, I mean, I can literally, we have like a dozen or more applications on the books using crypto, so I could, I don't rule anything out.
Because I knew a number of people who bought gold through digital tangible, and I think they pivoted to marijuana. So yeah, interesting pivot.
Yeah,
I think it could be really interesting. Sarika Pay is doing kind of like a trees delivery funding for marijuana companies. They do need a lot of. They're unbanked. So, any other questions? Right.
Is there any intention of having other metals?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's 92 naturally occurring metals on the planet that we know of, at least, and I don't see why people couldn't hold a little bits of all of them. You might not be able to take physical delivery of plutonium into your house, but you could maybe another vaulting facility, right? So I foresee with the extinguishing of national currencies, I mean, you have this kind of new problem too. Like we were talking a little bit at lunch, kind of this idea of like if you have an environment where yield is more difficult to come by, then like as far as maybe you have other metals as stores of value that you have as equivalent savings accounts now, potentially, and with more innovation, as we found, there's so many metals that we still don't really have a utility for, but as technology develops, we find new applications for metals that we never thought before we would even need them. So I think once we get rid of the monopoly of fiat currency and legal tender laws, once all of that inefficient capital goes away, then I think what you'll see is this rapid acceleration. I mean, you already see it with gold. I mean, gold is used, even though it's only about 10% of it is used industrially, it does have some really high-tech applications, like laser applications, aerospace, since it's the most malleable of all metals, right? You can make it thinner than any other metal, and it'll keep its hold. So, yeah, I think that's going to increase the value of these scarce metals and ultimately, be a alternative form of savings account.
All right. Any other questions? Or Stephen, ready? All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you both. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Anthem. Really appreciate you coming up here.